Good afternoon. I am Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this important announcement regarding unlicensed, untaxed, and unregulated marijuana sales. I want to just pause at the moment just to say that our thoughts and prayers are with the officer from the 47th Precinct. I want to thank all of the partners in government and law enforcement who are standing with us. Of course, starting with the CEO of our great city, Mayor Eric Adams, New York City Sheriff Anthony Miranda, New York City Corporation Counsel Judge Hins Radix, Christopher Alexander, the Director of the Office of Cannabis Management, our Borough President, Mark Levine, and our council member for where we're standing right now, and the Chair of the Committee on Oversight and Investigations, Gail Brewer. And we're also joined by a number of our outstanding council members from around the borough, council members Botcher, Rivera, Marte, and Abreu. We're also joined by outstanding members of my office, the District Attorney's Office, Assistant District Attorneys McCabe, Costello, and Galperin. So I just wanted to set the stage. On March 31st, 2021, the governor of the state of New York signed into law the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act, creating a comprehensive regulatory structure to oversee the licensure, cultivation, production, distribution, sale, and taxation of medical, adult use, and cannabinoid hemp within New York State. It was a long overdue step. For decades, Black and brown communities bore the brunt of marijuana enforcement. It unfairly criminalized young people, drove mass incarceration, and failed to make our communities safe. I personally saw the impact of that growing up in Harlem, and we do not want to go back to those days. But just as the end of alcohol prohibition in the 1930s didn't mean just anyone could start selling homemade bathtub gin to their local store, marijuana legalization in New York came with rules, and those rules must be respected. Instead of respect for the law, what we have seen recently is the proliferation of storefronts across New York City selling unlicensed, unregulated, untaxed cannabis products. I commend our Sheriff Miranda, and our partners at the NYPD for taking action to counter this trend. In a 2-week period, the Sheriff's Office issued 566 violations and seized $4.1 million worth of product at 53 locations. Likewise, the NYPD seized an additional 20 trucks and buses selling unlicensed cannabis. Enforcement actions like these, no doubt, will continue and will continue to discourage unlawful behavior, but we need to bring additional tools to bear to this problem. In the last month, the first licensed cannabis dispensaries opened for business in Greenwich Village. One is owned by a not-for-profit that supports people living with HIV and AIDS. The other by a formerly incarcerated entrepreneur who received priority for a license because he is one of countless Black men who was harmed by the drug war in the 1990s. But those legitimate businesses face stiff competition from shops that are not following the rules. It is time for the operation of unlicensed cannabis dispensaries to end. So today, my office sent letters to approximately 400 smoke shops in Manhattan. We informed these shops that my office is prepared to use our civil authority under Real Property Actions and Proceedings Law, Section 715(1), to require owners and landlords to commence eviction proceedings against commercial tenants who are engaged in illegal business activity, including the unlicensed sale of cannabis, the sale of untaxed cigarettes, and the sale of adulterated products. If owners and landlords fail to initiate timely eviction proceedings against these commercial tenants that are in violation of the law, or fail to prosecute those proceedings diligently, my office is prepared to take over and pursue eviction proceedings. While we are not ruling out criminal prosecutions for tax evasion, money laundering, or the sale of cannabis to minors, the focus of this initiative at this time is civil enforcement. We want to give New York's legal cannabis market a fair chance to thrive and give New Yorkers the security of knowing that a safe, orderly system is in place for cannabis dispensaries. Advocates fought hard to put racial equity at the center of New York's cannabis legalization regime. Past convictions were automatically expunged or suppressed. People with past convictions for marijuana and their family members are being given priority for these licenses. 50% of licenses are set aside to social and economic equity applicants. The state created an incubator program to encourage these applicants and provide technical assistance to first-time small business owners. And very importantly, 40% of the tax revenues from legal cannabis will be invested back into communities that were most harmed by prohibition. Those who flout the cannabis tax laws and regulations are robbing the very communities that suffered from marijuana criminalization for decades. Communities that are finally on the cusp of benefiting from a just and equitable system. We cannot allow that. I will not allow that. I hope to see full cooperation from building owners and commercial landlords as we pursue this education and criminal enforcement strategy. Together, we can level the playing field for New York's legal cannabis market and deliver on the promise of equity and fairness that legalization advocates fought so long and hard for. I now want to turn the podium over to the CEO of our great city, Mayor Eric Adams.
Thank you. Good job, brothers. Good job. I like to say the pilot. You know, we're all passengers on this plane, right, Marsha? This is just good coordination, and it's really about what you're seeing, and I hope is the hallmark of this cohort of electeds, particularly with the district attorney, as we continue to combine the use and the powers of our offices to go after those things that historically we attempted to fight in silos. What the district attorney is doing around mental health is just really a compliment to what our goals are, getting those who are living on the streets or in households that don't have the services they need. And now we're looking at the issue of cannabis. Just a few weeks ago, we saw the opening of a few locations, and we saw an overproliferation of those who thought they were going to skirt the law. And there's a few dynamics to that. I think proper education is at the hallmark of what we must do. When you read and state that marijuana is legal, many people took it that you can just open up a location anywhere you want, and that is why we started with a level of education. We wanted to let people know that you can't just open a shop. And then the real partnership with our lawmakers. Councilwoman Gail Brewer has been very clear of the large number of locations that have opened in her district. The borough president of Manhattan has also joined that. The local electeds that are here with us today have also pointed out these locations. And these locations, believe it or not, if you do an analysis, they're starting to feed robbery patterns. People realize that this is a cash business. They are targeting these businesses, and it is causing a level of robbery in these locations. So this holistic civil approach is also going to be connected to a public safety mechanism as well. You can't just open a shop and sell marijuana. There are rules, and we must abide by those rules in a very real way. And I was remiss, but I also want to thank you, District Attorney, and join your call, our prayers with the officer from the 47th Precinct. I communicated earlier with the police commissioner, and our hearts and prayers are with him and his family. And as we get new information, we will keep everyone up to date. This is what this administration is zeroing in on, and the Sheriff Anthony Miranda has really brought an approach of how we confiscate, educate, and not focus on incarcerate. That is not our goal. Our goal is not to turn one punitive approach to marijuana possession into another punitive approach. But we're very clear on those who are having high volumes and are attempting to skirt the law. We're going to use every level of government to address this. Legalizing cannabis was a major step forward, but we're not going to sit back and watch that progression go up in smoke because people want to emerge in an illegal market, especially when so many of them are selling unlawful and unlicensed products that could seriously harm consumers. These products are not tested. In some cases, they could be laced with fentanyl. These are dangerous products, and the public must be aware of that. And New Yorkers have had enough. They've sent a loud and clear message that these illegal smoke shops are on notice, and we're giving that notice today. They will be evicted. In many cases, those supplies that they're selling illegally, if it's over the legal amount, they're going to be confiscated. And there could also get an additional $5,000 penalty against them, including any type of legal payments that they have to have. And so the team has been focusing on this. The district attorney, the police department, our sheriffs, our agency of workers protection, we've all focused on this with the assistance of our local electors. And so these letters of notice are just one piece of our ongoing cannabis enforcement plan. We wanted to meet this immediately before it continues to spread throughout our entire city. We keep a database of locations. When our patrol forces identify a location, we keep a database on it, and we're going to continue to evolve on how we're going to carry out our enforcement. So today we are also taking direct actions against 4 unlicensed smoke shops in the 9th Precinct. The Corporation Counsel, Judge Radix, will go into that. These individuals have been selling cannabis without a license and were illegally selling products to underage auxiliary officers as part of our test cases. And so those who are selling illegal cannabis, they have no regard if you're selling it to minors or anyone else. This is a real issue that we are zeroing in on. And we're not going to stand by while illegal outlets sell drugs and vapes to our children, while simultaneously undermining an emerging industry that can provide jobs and justice for adults. This justice and jobs that we have fought for years. And we're not going to only use the tool of eviction. We're going to use the tool of proper enforcement, and that is why many of these initiatives are taking place at once. The 2-week interagency pilot program we ran in November put all these locations on notice, and that is why we want to educate, and we have continued our enforcement efforts in recent weeks against bad actors. We have given them plenty of time to clean up their act. We wanted to let them know that we're not going to stand idly by, and we won't stop until every illegal smoke shop is rolled up and stubbed out and know that there are ways to sell legal cannabis. We're clear that bad actors undermines the promise we made to New Yorkers who were impacted by marijuana criminalization. And I, too, like the DA, I have witnessed that not only as a civilian, but also in the police department, watching individuals being swept up by possessions of small quantities of marijuana. This is the moment we waited for to legalize and make sure that it's done correctly. Cannabis criminalization was an all-purpose tool to arrest, and prosecute young men and women in this city, particularly those of color. That was wrong then, and it would be wrong to have this process undermined. Legal cannabis is expected to be a $1.3 billion industry, $40 million per year in tax revenues. This could be a real windfall for our city, and it would support 19,000 to 24,000 local jobs. And so we have a moral obligation as well as a legal obligation to ensure that it is done correctly. And so we're working with our new Cannabis NYC office to make New York City aware of the opportunities that all New Yorkers should be aware of. We have witnessed how other municipalities did not get it right. We want to get it right here. And we want to help the businesses access finance, legal services, marketing resources, and ensuring the emerging industry delivers equity to those who deserve it the most. Now, again, this.
And with on-topic questions. Let's start with Steve. Idea, how are you?
the question comes to mind here, is your office prepared to take 400 some shops to court and go through eviction proceedings that can often get complicated? You'll have to prove the landlord knew that illegal behavior was happening. Is there the capacity in your office in the city to take hundreds of shops to court, or is this just bluster?
Well, the first hope is that putting people on notice, as we're doing today in this fashion, those commercial landlords, that they will heed that warning. And then after that, this is what we do. We enforce the law every day ably through 500 career prosecutors. And so we will do what we do in other matters. We'll look at the data, we'll look at the evidence, we'll look at where things are most acute. Councilmember Brewer mentioned the cluster around the two that are operating legally. That area certainly is a primary concern. Other clusters we'll look at. The mayor mentioned, as I think our borough president, the magnet for other criminal activity, the robberies we've seen. So those are the this is what we do in the New York County DA's office. So those are the kind of issues and considerations we'll look at to do priorities.
Reading between the lines here, it sounds like you need to prioritize cases. You're not going to take everyone into court.
Well, we're certainly not going to go in alphabetical order, right? I mean, what we do, and I don't mean to be coy about that, right? We do this on every issue, whether it's the coordination that the mayor and the NYPD and I have been doing on guns, right? We're looking at those few who are harming the most of us. We're strategic, we are smart, and we are targeted. And we're going to bring that same rigor to bear to this issue.
This is a question for everyone, whoever feels most comfortable asking and answering it. You guys raised the issue of the NYPD testing some of the seized marijuana. I'm wondering if somebody could tell me, what substances are you finding some of the seized marijuana is adulterated with? Mr. May, you mentioned fentanyl.
Yeah, and we'll do that. Chief Madry was going to be here, but he responded to this issue. We'll give you, because that's a great question. We'll give a list of what we're finding and what they are mixed with, if it's fentanyl or others. So I'll have the NYPD give a list of what we're finding in it. We'll get that to you today.
Thank you. For the mayor or the DA or whomever wants to answer, I'm just curious, what took so long? Because this issue has been a persistent and growing problem for over a year. So what took so long to get to this point where you decide to leverage your authority to pressure the landlords? And then how soon could the city theoretically begin eviction proceedings?
So look, the work has been going on previously. I think you heard the council member and others talk about the great work that the sheriff's been doing. I had in my opening remarks statistics about seizures and the work that NYPD has been doing. And so, as with all issues that are developing, you start with some tools and then you pan out a bit. We think this is a tool that at this moment is one that can be particularly impactful. So there has been work that's been done. That work won't stop. We'll add this to that, and we think together, the totality, the coordination, the partnership you've heard about will really move the needle.
And what about when evictions can begin?
So, as with all litigations and all initiatives of this, it's going to be very fact-borne. So we start today. I mean, I would say my hope is to not have to bring a matter, right? But hopefully the commercial landlords will understand that they've been put on notice, understand what we've laid out in the statute, and will want to, get compliant. Those that aren't, we will, continue to do some education, and then we'll move forward, as I said, to the last set of questions, in a strategic manner. So,
is there any consequence for landlords who don't comply or businesses who just simply move to another location? We saw this in the late '80s with laundromats that were selling cannabis.
well, it's an eviction proceeding, right? So the relief within the lawsuit itself would be from that premises. But as you see from just the coordinated effort here, we're not trying to move people from one location to another. We're trying to help this nascent industry and all the principles that undergird it stand up and flourish.
Thank you. A couple of questions. This applies to Manhattan only, obviously. For the mayor, can you talk about how this might set a precedent citywide? Yes.
Manhattan's better.
in spite of the ill-informed belief that Manhattan is, we're all the boroughs matter, and because of the uniqueness of what the district attorney is doing in our routine briefing with the other district attorneys, we're going to use this as an indicator of what the other counties are doing, because they all think outside the box. And so it is important to use what the DA is doing here. They share information, they share best practices. We're all in one city, and we're going to really roll out in our briefing, share what the district attorney is doing here. But also, we can't underestimate the power of what the Corporation Counsel is doing. She looked at this and her team, and she told me there's another tool we can use in our toolbox. And we're going to go after using our tools as well. And then we may have to look at the laws and see what our strengths are after someone ignores the request to evict and remove. How do we use it to go after either having extensive fines or take action to remove their property? You know, these are laws on the books where we're not going to allow people to weigh how much money they're making, how much the fines are, and say these are the costs of doing business. That can't happen.
We did have, and this might be for Mr. Alexander, I'm not sure whoever wants to jump in. We did talk with a smoke shop that was openly selling illegal marijuana in the West Village. And they said, look, we need more licenses. Like, we're all selling, we want to sell legally, but what can the state do to increase the number of licenses to make this work for everyone? Any response?
Yeah, we've been rolling out our licenses, but we're doing so in a way that the law dictates, making sure that those who've been impacted have an opportunity to go first. But we're also trying to build, this is a heavy regulated industry. You know, everything from, making sure that we're tracking products from seed to sale, making sure that we're, dictating what type of consumer education has to be made available at the storefront. I mean, we're doing a lot to make sure this is a well-regulated market. And so to folks who are going now and asking the question, why not just give us a license? Well, you've obviously demonstrated your ability to maintain compliance. And so that's a criteria of examining whether or not someone should get a license. So, I mean, we agree. We got to keep going. We've been at this now for a year, and we've been rolling out our program. While folks have seen the 2 dispensaries, we've issued 300 licenses. We've also drafted regulations, built up an agency, and been running across the state educating folks about these opportunities that are coming. And so, yes, we need more licenses. Yes, we need to roll out more dispensaries. I truly believe as much as this coordinated effort has to happen, as much as we have to keep seizing, as much as we have to go after landlords, we also need to create and open more regulated shops, right? And I want to just point out, you all will see, and we've talked about this previously, a verification tool, big sticker on the front of those legal shops that lets you know that this business is properly licensed by the state and is selling products that have gone through our supply chain, including our testing and other regulatory requirements. So we know that, by opening more shops will also help tamper down this illicit activity. Let me be clear. Every state that has legalized has had some form of proliferation. Because this is New York City, it's particularly bad because this is the city. This is the center of the world. And so that is a thing that's going to happen at the same time as we continue to roll out this market, as well as taking these necessary enforcement actions. That's the kind of recipe that we need in order to really deter consumers from going to illicit markets and to these illicit shops, and to make sure that these business operators don't want to open up anymore.
So I guess first question I have is, like, in terms of the shops that are being targeted, like, and prioritized for legal action, like, can you be a bit more specific about whether you're targeting ones that, have been proven to be selling to minors, whether it's like shops that have opened up recently versus long-standing convenience stores that happen to start selling weed because everyone else was doing it? Like, is there any sort of like determination in terms of that, or is it just sort of the geographic area?
So I think you touched upon some of the considerations. I think I touched upon them earlier. Geography is one, because they impact on the licensed businesses, sales to minor, if we know of adulterated products, the way in which they respond to our letter. So all of those are considerations. It's, as we lawyers would say, a totality of the circumstances test. We take all of that into account, and then we make priority decisions.
I wonder if the Corporation Counsel can tell us the locations of the places that you serve with notices, and were they actually closed down? Can they reopen once they've gotten this notice of nuisance?
No, I cannot give you those locations. But what we've done in this nuisance abatement is that the law does not allow you to do an ex parte action. So what we've done is we've served the papers. We've asked the court to give us a specific date. And when we receive that date, we are serving the documents and asking that the owners or whomever gets the paper served on them, that they come to court and that they're heard.
Right now and doing business?
Yes.
So the purpose of this was to do what?
The purpose of the nuisance abatement is to serve them. They have to be served with notice.
And how long will it take before you can actually bring them to court?
I do not know the exact date. We can provide you with that. The court has served when we filed the papers today. We have not yet been given a court date.
And it's specifically the property owners that are being served, right? Or is it also the store owners? Is it specifically the landlords of the properties where the stores are that are being served?
The people in the stores who are selling the contraband are being served.
For the mayor, when you were a police officer, did you make any arrests for conduct that's now legal? And do you regret that? The same question for the district attorney. When you were a prosecutor, when you were a line prosecutor, did you prosecute anyone for conduct that's now legal, and how do you feel about that?
No. I don't recall making any marijuana arrests. And what was happening during that time, which was really suspect. In fact, I was extremely vociferous about addressing. We were stopping young people. We were telling them to empty their pockets. And once they took the marijuana out of their pockets, it was in public view. That escalated to an arrest. So while it was in their pockets, it was treated differently. And I just didn't believe that. I thought it was targeting young people, and I thought it was unacceptable. And as a police officer, I was extremely clear that I thought this was a violation and it was an abuse of how we should have been carrying out our laws.
So when that would happen and someone would take out marijuana from his or her pocket, you wouldn't arrest that person?
No, I would never put myself in the position to tell them to take the marijuana out of their pockets.
Okay, Mr. Brad?
Yeah, that's not a part of my practice. You know, so I was at the New York State Attorney General's office. We certainly didn't do that type of prosecution. And when I was in the Southern District of New York, these type of prosecutions are not ones that the office was doing. What I did do and work on, which we're looking at, is really following the money upstream. So a money laundering case of, people who were wholesale business owners who were laundering it for a violent operation. And we see that blueprint. We're employing that kind of strategy, following the money, following the contraband in our gun practice, and other support our other violent crime enforcement in the DA's office.
Okay, Dana, you have the last topic.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, you just mentioned that some of this illegal cannabis could be laced with fentanyl. Do you know, and I know this is kind of a follow-up, but do you know of any specific example of that being the case?
No, we'll find out. I'm gonna have the police department, based on their testing, the items they tested, to see if we have a list of what the items are laced with, if at all.
And then secondly, when is the last time you consumed a cannabis product, and where did you get it from?
When was the last time?
Consumed cannabis.
I just pass by the places you cop from. I don't go inside and purchase myself. Let's do a few off topic. Okay, we're gonna spare y'all. Unless your off topic is for the DA or anyone else that's here, we're gonna spare you having to go through. Okay, one for the DA.
Start with Aaron. Go ahead. Thank you. One on, one off, actually. Would it be your hope, Alvin, that any of these that end up with an eviction proceeding would be precluded from getting a license, a cannabis license? And then the off topic, Mark Pomerantz portrays it as altruism for exposing your decision or indecision about going forward with a Trump prosecution. Was that the righteous course for him to take, and is your office considering, after your letter to Simon & Schuster, taking any action against him?
So I defer to our state regulator in terms of that. I do think he hinted at an answer. He said compliance now is something that they're taking into consideration, and I think that makes sense, but certainly defer to them. On your second question, let me start by saying I take my ethical obligations very seriously. We have an active, ongoing investigation, so I'm constrained from what I can say. I'm not going to say anything that could potentially compromise or jeopardize that investigation. But here's what I can say. For more than 20 years now, I've worked on hard, challenging, white-collar matters. I did that at the Southern District of New York. I did that in the New York State Attorney General's office. I've prosecuted a sitting district attorney, the leader of our New York State legislature, a mayor, and an FBI agent. I bring hard cases when they are ready. Last year when I took office, I did an exhaustive review of a matter put before me and came to the same conclusion that multiple senior prosecutors in my office independently came to. And that was that Mark Pomerantz's case simply was not ready. So I said to my team, let's keep working. And while Mr. Pomerantz quit a year ago, apparently to write a book, our excellent team continued the work on the case. I want to specifically respond to Mr. Pomerantz's criticism of our team. It is appalling that he insulted the skill and professionalism of our prosecutors. We have the most outstanding lawyers in the country working every day in the Manhattan District Attorney's office to keep the city safe from the streets to the suites. We will continue to do the work of this office without distraction or disturbance. This is the Manhattan District Attorney's office. I'm honored to lead it, and I will continue to do so, focused on that which matters, the evidence and the law.
Do you feel his book has hurt your investigation?
I'll do one more on this.
You were concerned about his book possibly hurting the investigation.
I'll do one more on this, and this may answer your second question, which I may not have gotten to. Notwithstanding our request for an advance copy of the book, which is certainly standard practice at the Federal Department of Justice to get that type of review, we as an office and I was not granted an advance copy. So I haven't read the book. I don't know what's in it, but I continue to be concerned that it could jeopardize or undermine our ongoing investigation.
Off topic, the mayor.
Just showed your street credibility from the streets to the suite, you know. Masha,
How you doing?
quite well.
So your office has prepared a budget memo that indicates that the state budget has numerous hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of unfunded mandates, everything from the MTA to charter schools to migrants. If you can't get the legislature to roll back some of these unfunded mandates, will you have to do massive cuts to services, and what will be affected?
I had a conversation with the executive chamber this morning to go through the budget. There's some good items in the budget, but the fiscal aspects are concerning to us. And I believe that those of you who have covered this administration, you would somewhat agree that fiscal prudence is what the hallmark of this administration. We did a PEG, not once but twice. We've made some tough choices around how we use taxpayers' dollars. Some people point to the fact that we have an $8 billion rainy day fund, but you know we have to keep in account we have union contracts to settle. We have a real issue with our health care stabilization fund. There's some real issues. We made some smart, tough decisions, and we balanced the budget. We turned it over to the city council, and there's a potentiality that we will have to find $4 billion more. And so where would that leave us? And you know, we shared those concerns, and we're going to continue to speak with the governor and her team. We just believe that New York City, we have really done our share of being fiscally responsible and ensuring that we take on the surprise additive that we had to endure.
$4 billion, where will it leave you? What will you have to cut if you have $4 billion in unanticipated costs?
We are looking deeply, and every New Yorker would feel the pain of that.
Mr. Mayor, so last month.
Bernadette,
How are you?
you.
Good. Last month you said that the migrant crisis would cost the city $2 billion, but yesterday you said that it would cost $4 billion. So I'm wondering what changed with that estimate, and then also separately, what do you say to critics that have accused you of aiding and abetting migrants who want to illegally cross into Canada?
Okay, I didn't say 4 billion. 1.4 billion this fiscal year, 2.8 the next. Those are the numbers. 1.4 this, 2.8 the next. And those critics, you know, New York, 8.5 million people, 35 million opinions. You know, so those critics who say we are aiding and abetting, I don't know where they're getting that from. We are not telling anyone to go to any country or state. People who arrived here and already had other destinations in mind were basically compelled to come to New York. And when they're part of our intake process and we speak with people and they say their desire is to go somewhere else, there's a host of partnerships from the Catholic Charities to others that have been coordinating with people to get to their final destination. So there's no coordinated effort. We don't have a website. We don't have a recruitment campaign. We're not telling people go to another country. What we will do, we're going to have a destabilization, or what I should say is a decompression strategy. This is a statewide issue, and we've called on the governor and others as we called on the country. This is a national problem, and there should be a decompression strategy at the border, and we're going to figure out a decompression strategy for our city.
Now, the two figures that you just mentioned does add up to $4 billion, though. So what went into that assessment?
Right. Well, you know, I was never an expert in math, as you know.
I mean, you've been to the shelters, you've slept at the terminal. What is taking up the bulk of the city's costs? And again, why is it $4 billion? I mean, Comptroller Lander said within 3 years it would cost the city $3 billion. So what's going into city?
We were constantly stating to everyone who asked, the targets were moving. We were trying to get the final numbers. And the reason we did that is so we won't be here. If we would have given you 300 million last year, and then we tell you 1.4 million, you know, then argue with, well, why did you say 300 million? That's why we kept saying we need to look at these numbers. People were still coming in. We're still getting a heavy influx. Those numbers may grow also. So we know that this is a moving target. There's a lot of uncertainty. And so when Jock from the budget office was able to come up with some good numbers that we can turn over, we did just that. You know, we were unclear of the exact numbers because it kept moving. And so now we're at a place where we're comfortable of saying $1.4 billion.
Mayor, back to this memo. It also spoke about how the governor's proposal for migrants only would cover about 29% of shelter costs. Are you frustrated with the state that they still haven't spent as much as you would like on this migrant crisis here in the city? And second part of this question, you know how Albany works. Who are you planning to meet with next week for Tin Cup Day to sort of help negotiate some of these unfunded mandates?
The plan was based on the budget was like this 30%, 30%, 30% split. You know, where we would pick up 30, the state picks up 30, and the feds picks up 30. The Hakeem Jeffries is not in the majority. He's not the majority leader. He's the minority leader. If we look at the history of a Republican-controlled Congress who they don't want to do comprehensive immigration reform, if we're counting on their 30% split, that just doesn't add up. You know, so we need to make sure that we have a foolproof plan to address this national issue, and we don't see the help coming from a Republican-controlled Congress. Senator Schumer and Congressman Jeffries was able to get the 800 plus in the omnibus bill. We don't know if we're going to get more help from a Republican-controlled Congress.
Yeah, and then the second part of that question, just next week when you're in Albany, who are you planning to meet with, and how are you going to negotiate that?
We have been having ongoing conversations with a lot of the electeds up there. There's some great allies up there that believe in common sense budgeting. And we have been having great conversation. I'm going to sit down and continue to talk with the leaders in both chambers, Leader Andrew Stewart Cousin in the Senate and Leader Carl Hasty in the Assembly, and to show their members who represent New York, show them this is going to impact the basic services in your districts. That is crucial to show we're in this together, and those who represent the city, they must be aware of that. And I'm troubled that out of the $500 million that we're supposed to pay, not 1 year, the state is going to do $300 million one time. We are told to pay $500 million forever. No other municipality in the state has been asked to do anywhere near that, only New York City.
Mr. Mayor, on Madison Square Garden, the city has a big decision coming up. The permit for it to operate expires this summer. James Dolan has been making a lot of provocative moves. I wonder how you envision this permitting process going. Would you see some sort of way to incentivize Mr. Dolan to move Madison Square Garden?
I'm not sure what provocative moves he has been doing. Things that happen within Madison Square Garden and how they carry out their procedures is not going to get in the way of negotiating the best deal for the city. Madison Square Garden is a real win for us. It is very much in our DNC plan. It was clear that being able to have an arena that size is allowing us to do some great things. We have our sports teams here, events here. We're going to factor in the benefit of the city in our decision, not of what he's doing and how he runs his mannerisms inside the garden. That doesn't play into it at all.
Do you like where it is now?
Madison Square Garden? Yes, I do. I can't quite understand why it's called Square. Maybe we could rename it to Madison Round Garden, but I think it's a great location, 34th Street, Penn Station. People don't have to drive in. They could use public transportation. You have the 7 line, the 8 line. It's just a good place for it to be. I'm happy with it being there.
What's the latest on the officer we shot in Brooklyn over the weekend? And has the NYPD released his name yet? If not, I'm wondering why.
Not of my knowledge. In the releasing of the name, the police commissioner, you can communicate and she'll make that determination. We're still we're prayerful. We're hoping that he's able to pull through. The families advise on whatever medical decision they want to make, but we're hopeful. This was a cowardly act. Where I just want to take my hat off to those officers who worked around the clock, did not sleep. Great police and detective work, and we were able to apprehend this individual with an extensive criminal record. Recidivism. You gave Dana 2 questions. Interesting.
To follow up on the question regarding Madison Square Garden, I mean, you do have a lever at your disposal to exact some sort of concession from MSG with its operating permit. Is there anything you want them to do in exchange for letting them continue to operate and make a ton of money there?
Yes, we're going to be a hard negotiator for the people of the city to get the best deal for the people of the city. And in no way am I saying that we're not going to do that. Any use of city resources, we're going to be a hard negotiator. But it's not going to be based on the win-loss record of the New York Knicks. It's going to be based on what's the best deal for the city.
Mr. Mayor, going to the State of the Union tonight. Well, is this your first time, first of all?
Yes.
It's second, are you planning on having any conversations with the White House about migrant funding?
Every time I see the White House, I talk about migrant funding. We're going to continue to press that this is a national issue and we must come up with a national solution.
Mr. Mayor, given that New York City is paying for transportation for migrants to the Canadian border, is your criticism of Colorado Governor Polis hypocritical? Why or why not? And have you reached out to Canadian officials to coordinate this issue?
Okay, so we should be clear because I don't want it to be misprinted. We are not coordinating with anyone to go to Canada. We're not doing that. There's no role that the city is playing to tell migrants to go to Canada. Part of our intake process is to speak with people to find out their needs, to find out to do an evaluation. If their determination, as I stated over and over again in every presser that we sent out, the reticketing process is part of our process of how we're going to assist migrants. Migrants were forced to come to New York. Many of them did not want to come to New York. The substantial number stayed here, but many did not want to come here. They wanted to go somewhere else. They were not given that option. And so, unlike other municipalities, we are speaking to people, interacting with them, and say, what are your needs? Hey, we have family somewhere else. That's where we want to go. We want to help them connect with their family members.
Okay, Mayor's got a balance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any more information about the Kapu